Welcome, dear listener. As you settle into bed and let the weight of the day melt away, allow yourself to be carried by the quiet rhythm of this story. Let the world outside dim and your breath soften. Tonight, we journey to a quiet alley, to a house that waits in silence for those who need it most. You don't need to do anything now, just listen and rest. The night is long, and the story will hold you gently. Down the narrow lane of Tanera Street, where the street lamps hum softly and the cobblestones stay damp long after rain, there is a house that doesn't quite belong to the world outside. House number 12, 2 stories tall, with a crooked weather vane and a door that sticks when it rains. No one lives there, and yet the house is never empty. Elias, the town's retired librarian, swears he once saw the windows glow gold just past midnight. Children whisper that the house breathes, but no one remembers who owns it. They only know the door opens when it needs to. Rain fell in sheets the night Clara stumbled upon the house. She'd taken the wrong bus, her phone was dead, and the weight of the week had finally broken her shoulders. When she saw the porch light flicker on, she walked up without thinking. The door creaked open before she could knock. Inside, it was dry, warm, and smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. She fell asleep on the couch. When she awoke, it was morning, and in her hand was a letter not addressed, not signed, just for words. You are not lost. Vincent arrived the next night, soaked and shivering. A once famous violinist who hadn't touched his instrument in years. He'd meant to walk past, but something about the warm light from the window called to him. Inside, he found a room filled with music box, Essel playing different melodies, all in tune. On a small table sat a worn violin like his own. When he picked it up, his hands knew exactly what to do. That night, he played again, just for the house. When he left in the morning, his heart felt lighter. Lena was the first one to return. Weeks after her first visit, she came back not out of curiosity, but a longing she couldn't explain. She wandered into the upstairs bedroom and felt drawn to the fireplace. Behind a loose brick, she found a yellowed letter, dated 1952. It told of a soldier writing to a lover he never returned to. Lena cried as she read. Her own grandfather had gone missing in that same year. Later, when she brought the letter to her grandmother, silence fell between them and then a soft whisper. He wrote that for me. A teenager named John snuck in one afternoon on a dare. He stayed longer than planned. In the study, he found a dusty globe and an old map covered in hand-drawn notes. The map was of a place that didn't exist, but it included a sketch of a bench he used to visit with his late mother. As he traced the lines, he found words hidden in the folds. She still sits with you. When he left, he ran not in fear, but toward the memory, toward a place he'd forgotten he needed. Arthur was in his 60s when he wandered into number 12. He'd just left a gallery exhibit he was supposed to speak at, but couldn't bring himself to talk about his work. He hadn't painted in years. Inside the house, he found an empty picture frame propped against the parlor wall. When he looked through it, he didn't see the room behind it, but a field he'd once visited with the woman he almost married. The house offered him brushes and canvas. That night, he painted again, filling the frame. When he was done, he left the painting on the mantel, smiling for the first time in a long while. No one saw when Emily arrived. The front door simply opened in the middle of the night, and she stepped inside barefoot, in pajamas, her eyes closed. The house was quiet. She made her way upstairs and lay down on the guest bed. The next morning, she woke up confused but rested. Tucked under the pillow was a photo of her as a child, holding hands with her older brother, who had passed away years ago. On the back, written in pencil, "I still walk beside you." Hugo had passed the house every day for 3 decades. One evening, as the sky turned purple with dusk, he finally stopped. The front door was open. Inside, he found clocks, hundreds of them, ticking softly in harmony. Some he recognized as his own creations, long sold or gifted away. One in the corner had no hands, but ticked nonetheless. As he stood before it, he whispered a name. Elise. The clock chimed once. She had loved that chime. The house gave him silence then, a kind of peace that felt like forgiveness. 9-year-old twins, Ava and Eli, came to the house during a thunderstorm. They had not spoken since their parents' accident 2 years earlier. The storm pushed them toward the glowing windows. Inside, the house was full of toys from decades past. In the attic, they found a puppet theater. The puppets moved gently on their own, telling a wordless tale of 2 siblings who learned to speak through music and touch. That night, as the storm quieted, Ava whispered Eli's name. For the first time, he replied. Mira returned to number 12 after many years. She had first come there as a teenager, heartbroken and afraid. Now in her 40s, she carried a sealed envelope and a bouquet of lavender. She placed them on the windowsill in the front room, then sat in silence. Hours passed. Before she left, she tucked the envelope behind the frame of the old mirror. Inside it was her story, a story the house had helped her write. A reminder to the next visitor that they, too, were seen. A traveler named Owen arrived on a snowy evening. He didn't enter the house right away. Instead, he stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the attic window. He had dreamt of that very window for years. When he finally entered, the house was waiting. In the attic, he found a small telescope pointed at the stars. A notebook beside it, filled with someone else's stargazing sketches, each labeled with the same name, Owen, but none were in his handwriting. Celia had come to the house out of curiosity. She was a wedding planner, used to making magic for others. She never believed in the romance herself, but in one of the bedrooms, she found a closet filled with vintage clothing and, among them, a pristine wedding dress, perfectly her size. Tucked in the sleeve was a note, "For when you believe again." She tried it on. It felt like the dress had been waiting. Theo was a songwriter who hadn't written a line in years. Inside the house, he found a piano covered in dust. As he opened it, the strings hummed with warmth. Around the room, lyrics were scribbled on old wallpaper, behind curtains, under rugs. As he played, a melody returned to him, one he thought he'd lost forever, one his mother used to hum when she baked on rainy Sundays. The house had kept it safe. On her 80th birthday, Ruth came to sit on the porch of house number 12. She didn't plan to go inside, but the house opened the door anyway. In the kitchen, she found a small cake and one lit candle. No one was there, yet everything was warm. The same scent of lemon and tea her mother used to prepare on birthdays long past. She whispered a wish, the candle flickered, then glowed steady. Inside the hallway, there's a mirror not like the others. One visitor, a man named Darren, looked into it and didn't see himself, but the version of himself he wished to become. He stared for hours, watching a life unfold that had seemed impossible just a day ago. When he turned away, he found in his coat pocket a slip of paper. Begin today. And he did. Marian had been walking for hours, trying to outrun the loneliness that clung to her like a second skin. When she stumbled into number 12, she found the living room aglow, a fire already crackling in the hearth. There was only one armchair, the kind her father used to nap in every Sunday. She sat, and the chair held her like it remembered her. Above the fireplace, the family photo she had long lost smiled back at her. She closed her eyes and felt home for the first time in decades. Alex was a mail carrier who rarely missed a route, yet one envelope always stayed in his bag, an unsent letter to his estranged daughter. One rainy evening, seeking shelter, he stepped into number 12. In the upstairs study, he found a desk with dozens of drawers. One of them held letters, just like his sent, unfinished, unspoken. His own letter had somehow found its way inside. He rewrote it there, for the first time, with honesty, and when he placed it back into the drawer, the weight on his chest eased. The house had a guest book in the foyer. Most never noticed it, but when Iris entered, she was drawn to it immediately. She flipped through pages filled with names, dates, and messages, some in elegant cursive, some scribbled in haste. She turned to a blank page and found her name already written, along with a note in handwriting that matched her father's. "You've made it, my brave girl." Her knees gave out. The house was still. It was the welcome she had waited a lifetime to hear. Inside the attic, beneath dusty beams and forgotten trunks, it rained. Softly, a gentle mist, a calming patter on the wooden floor. Marcus, a poet who hadn't written in years, found the room while searching for silence. Instead, he found this strange, peaceful downpour. He sat by the window, letting the water wash over his notebook, and began to write. The words came like a flood, memories, dreams, things he didn't know he still carried. When he left, the attic was dry again. It was Clara who heard it first, the girl with the red umbrella, who had returned many times since. One night, as she passed through the hallway, she paused by the grandfather clock. The ticking slowed, then stopped. In the silence, a whisper. "Thank you for remembering me." She turned, but no one was there. Yet the warmth in her chest said otherwise. That night, every room in the house glowed a little brighter. Number 12 had spoken not in words, but in gratitude. And for the first time, Clara knew she wasn't just visiting. She was part of the story now. Hidden behind coats in the hallway closet was a narrow, tarnished mirror. When Leo opened the door, he wasn't looking for reflections, just a place to hang his wet jacket. But when he glanced into the glass, he saw himself as a boy again, hand in hand with his late mother, walking by the river. He smiled, not with sadness, but with the relief of reunion. The moment lasted only seconds, but it filled years of longing. Camila had always been late for appointments, for apologies, for chances. But when she stepped inside number 12, a door upstairs opened by itself, revealing a room untouched by time. Her childhood diary lay open on the bed, right where she had left it. The clock ticked gently. No one rushed her. The house had waited, patiently, as if it knew she'd return only when ready. There was a window in the dining room that showed not the street outside, but a meadow. People came and went through it, some smiling, some crying, some dancing alone in the tall grass. Raj, a retired teacher who had lost most of his former students to time, watched as their young faces appeared beyond the glass. He waved, they waved back. The meadow faded when he blinked, but the feeling stayed. He had made a difference. Hidden beneath the doormat was a small brass key. Naya found it when she came in with muddy boots and a broken heart. She tried it in every door until one opened the basement. Inside was a chest of instruments, a cello, a flute, a worn harmonica. She had given up music long ago. She picked up the harmonica and played a few unsure notes. The house hummed in harmony, and for the first time in years, she felt heard. Elias knew his time was short. He came to number 12 with a quiet acceptance. The room at the end of the hallway opened to a space of soft light and silence. There was nothing inside but a comfortable chair, a blanket, and a cup of warm tea. As he sat, the house seemed to breathe with him, slow, gentle, kind. He closed his eyes, not in fear, but in peace. And when the sun rose, the room was empty once more, ready to welcome whoever needed it next. In the bedroom, at the back of the house, sat a small music box, its surface worn, the ballerina atop it frozen mid-spin. Elise found it while searching for a place to lay her suitcase. She hadn't heard music in years, not since her sister passed. When she wound the key, the box played their favorite lullaby. Her sister's laughter echoed softly in the room, and Elise sat still, letting the tears fall without shame. She wasn't alone, not anymore. In the hallway leading to the attic hung an old map, yellowed with age and dotted with pins. Jonah, a retired cartographer, paused before it, noticing strange details, roads that no longer existed, lakes that had never been named. One pin blinked faintly. When he touched it, he remembered a childhood trip with his brother, lost to time. The house had remembered the route he thought forgotten, and for the first time, he forgave himself for not saying goodbye. A row of shoes lined the entryway, too many for one person. Amelia, who had never felt at home in her skin, noticed a pair of red sneakers she hadn't seen since her teen years. She slipped them on. They fit perfectly. As she walked through the house, she passed mirrors and saw herself not as she was, but as she wished to be, whole, joyful, real. The house didn't judge. It reflected her truest self. Upstairs, beyond a locked door, was a tower room with a broken clock. Ezra dreamed of it before he arrived. When he entered the house, the dream returned. He climbed the stairs and found the very room. The same chimes, the same twilight. The clock began to tick when he stepped inside. Time folded around him, and for one long night, he relived the happiest hour of his life, dancing with his late wife on their anniversary. When the clock stopped again, he whispered, "Thank you." The power in the house never flickered, even in the worst storms. But one night, the lights dimmed slowly, room by room. Only the lantern in the foyer remained. Lucien, a drifter with no place to return to, was the only one inside. He followed the soft glow from room to room, seeing the traces of everyone who had come before, notes on tables, scarves on hooks, forgotten mugs, still warm. The lantern led him to the porch, where dawn waited. He stepped into the morning, and the light behind him gently blinked out. The house had one more story to hold, and beneath a loose board in the living room, Sienna discovered a stack of yellowing letters tied with a frayed ribbon. They were addressed to no one, just signed with initials. She read them aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. The letters spoke of a lost love, of trains missed and dances never taken. As she read the final line, a breeze swept the room, carrying the scent of lilacs, her late mother's perfume. Some letters are meant to be heard. Downstairs, near the cellar, a room bore no name. Its walls were bare, except for handwritten notes stuck in uneven lines. Names, scribbled or ornate, hundreds of them. Ben, who struggled for years with memory loss, wandered in and touched a name written in a child's scrawl, his own. He knelt down and wept, not out of sadness, but relief. For the first time in years, he remembered the sound of his father's voice, calling him home. Out back, beyond a crooked gate, was a garden thick with wild flowers and silence. Maya, who had been afraid of the world outside, stepped through and found rows of plants she had grown with her grandfather, long gone now. She touched the petals gently. In that moment, she knew she could start again. Healing didn't need to be loud. It just needed space. On a desk near the front window sat a typewriter. It still worked, somehow. Liam, a writer who hadn't written in a decade, sat and let his fingers rest on the keys. The typewriter began without him, clicking out a story line by Lena, story of a boy who dreamed of houses that remembered. Tears blurred his eyes as he recognized his own childhood journal entries woven into fiction. The house knew his words before he did. In the dining room, one chair was always pulled slightly away from the table, as if someone had just stepped out. Ava, who had recently lost her partner, sat there instinctively. As she did, she felt a warm pressure on her hand, soft, reassuring, impossible. She closed her eyes and spoke aloud, the apology she never had the courage to say. And somehow, she felt it heard. The chair remained still, but the silence was no longer empty. It was peaceful. There was a small window seat on the second floor, where the afternoon light always pooled, even on cloudy days. Clara, who had once been a painter, sat there for hours. She sketched absent-mindedly, letting the house guide her hand. When she finished, the paper showed the face of her first love, a face she hadn't seen in decades. The colors were gentle, the lines filled with forgiveness. She left the drawing on the window for the light to keep. Just inside the entrance, an old iron hook held a single coat-brown woolen, slightly too big. Henry arrived, soaked from the rain, and shrugged it on. In the pocket, he found a photograph, folded 3 times. His family, long estranged, smiling in better days. He stood for a long time at the threshold. Maybe it wasn't too late to reach out. The coat felt warm and familiar, as if it had waited just for him. In the parlor stood a grand piano, dusty but tuned. On some nights, notes would play themselves. Julian, a former concert pianist whose hands had stiffened with age, sat before it, unsure. When he pressed the keys, the music poured out as though he had never stopped. The melody wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. He laughed for the first time in years, the sound rising with the chords. The staircase always creaked in a certain pattern. Naya, a child who spoke very little, listened closely as she climbed. Each creak seemed to speak, not in words, but in comfort. She began leaving notes tucked between the steps drawings, little poems, stories she couldn't say aloud. The next morning, she'd find a small reply in different handwriting. The house was listening, and now, so was she. A long mirror stretched across the hallway, its surface cloudy with age. Most walked past without looking, but Armin stopped and stared. The reflection showed not just him, but versions of himself, who he had been, who he could have been. He reached out and touched the glass. The version that smiled back at him was gentler, quieter, still hopeful. He nodded. It was enough, and the mirror, for just a second, shone like morning. In the attic, folded carefully in an old chest, was a quilt made of mismatched fabric patches. Each patch held a memory stitched in thread and time. Grace, a grandmother who had lost her way after her husband's passing, traced the patterns with her fingers. Each patch whispered stories of laughter, warmth, and family dinners long gone. She wrapped the quilt around her shoulders and finally felt embraced by the past, ready to step into the future. The fireplace in the living room never truly went cold. On some nights, it seemed to murmur secrets. Tom, a writer struggling with grief, sat close to the hearth. The fire's crackle formed words only he could understand, messages of hope, resilience, and renewal. As the embers glowed, Tom found the strength to write again, pouring his soul into stories that healed his heart. A dusty album sat on a side table, filled with black and white photos. Each image captured fleeting moments, smiles, tears, stolen glances. Sophie, a young woman feeling lost in the modern world, flipped through the pages. The faces seemed to call her home, reminding her that connection transcends time. With renewed courage, she decided to call her estranged family. In the hallway, an old lantern hung from a hook, its flame never flickering. Ethan, a traveler running from his past, paused beneath its steady light. It felt like a beacon, constant, unwavering. He breathed deeply, allowing himself to feel the weight lift. The lantern's glow guided him not just through the house, but towards forgiveness and peace. In the quietest room of the house, a visitor named Lena sat with a letter in hand, a farewell she had never sent. The house seemed to hold its breath as she read aloud, releasing years of sorrow. As the last words left her lips, a gentle breeze swept through, carrying the heaviness away. Lena stood, feeling lighter than she had in years, ready to face the dawn. Outside, beneath the sprawling oak tree, stood a weathered garden bench. Naomi, weary from life's struggles, sank onto it and closed her eyes. The gentle rustle of leaves and distant bird songs wrapped around her like a lullaby. Memories of childhood summers flooded back, and with them a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, peace was still within reach. In the study, shelves bowed under the weight of countless books, their pages yellowed with time. Marcus, a man who had lost his love of reading, pulled one down and inhaled deeply. The familiar scent stirred something deep inside, a spark of curiosity, a yearning for stories yet to be told. He opened the book, ready to begin again. One night, as rain drummed gently on the roof, Eliza listened, letting the sound soothe her restless mind. Each drop was a tiny reminder that life's troubles could be washed away, if only for a moment. In the quiet rhythm of the storm, she found comfort and the courage to dream anew. On the mantelpiece, a single photograph, framed in silver, caught the light. It showed a family, laughing, carefree and whole. Daniel, long estranged from his own family, stared at the image until tears blurred his vision. The house seemed to whisper that reconciliation was possible, if only he dared reach out. As dawn approached, the front door of house number 12 creaked open slowly, inviting the morning in. Visitors, old and new, gathered on the porch, each carrying a piece of their story, each touched by the house's quiet magic. Together they watched the sunrise, the promise of a new day warming their hearts. As our journey in house number 12 comes to a close, may your heart feel lighter and your mind find peace. Rest now, dear listener, wrapped in calm and comfort. Let the quiet of the night cradle you gently, and may your dreams be soft, warm, and filled with hope. Sleep well, and until we meet again, good night and sweet dreams.